I never thought my secret would be exposed this way, but that night when he walked in, everything changed. Have you ever had a moment in your life where everything just freezes? Your heart stops. Your breath catches in your throat. And for a few terrifying seconds, time itself feels like it's holding you hostage? I had one of those moments. A moment that, even now, sends a shiver down my spine whenever I think about it. Because in that split second, my entire world cracked open, and I saw myself for who I really was. A wife, a mother, a woman who thought she had control over her desires until I didn't. I used to believe that secrets could be buried. That as long as no one knew what was happening in the quiet corners of my mind, it didn't count as real. That I could lie to myself and get away with it. But life has a cruel way of exposing the things you hide the most. That night, when the door swung open, when I locked eyes with him, I felt something I had never felt before. Not just fear. Not just shame. But something far, far worse. I saw recognition. He knew. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just my secret anymore. If you think you know where this story is going, trust me, you don't. Because even I didn't see this coming. And by the time I did, it was already too late. Before I tell you everything, make sure you subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. It's free, and it helps the channel grow. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss the stories I have to tell. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that temptation never knocks. It just walks right in. I used to believe that love was enough. That as long as you were married, as long as you wore the ring, you'd never feel alone. I was wrong. My husband, Stephen, wasn't a bad man. He provided. He worked hard. He did everything society says a good husband should do. But somewhere along the way, he forgot about me. Or maybe I was never really part of his world to begin with. The house we built together was big, beautiful, but hollow. Cold walls. Empty rooms. A place where two people lived together, but existed separately. We spoke, but we never really talked. We touched, but it never felt like anything. And over time, I started fading into the background, like a piece of furniture he barely noticed. I told myself it was normal. That this was what marriage became after years of being together. That love didn't always have to feel alive. But deep down, I knew I was starving for something I couldn't name. And then, he came home. My stepson, Jude, back from college. Taller, older, different. I had known him since he was a kid, but now he was a man. Confident. Self-assured. He carried himself with a kind of ease that made me aware of just how much I had shrunk into myself over the years. And for the first time, I saw him in a way I had never seen him before. At first, it was nothing. A passing thought. A fleeting awareness. But awareness is dangerous, isn't it? Because once you notice something, you can't unsee it. We started talking more. Not the usual surface-level conversations about school or life. Real conversations. He asked about me. How I was feeling. If I was happy. No one had asked me that in years. And when I answered, he actually listened. Not with polite nods or distracted glances at his phone. He looked at me. Really looked. As if I was someone worth hearing. Worth seeing. I told myself it was innocent. That I was just grateful for the attention. But the truth is, I had never felt more alive. My husband barely noticed the change in me. Or maybe he did, but he was too wrapped up in his own world to care. He still left early. Still came home late. Still slept on his side of the bed, facing away from me, lost in dreams I was never a part of. But my stepson, Jude, he saw me. And once I felt what it was like to be seen again, I couldn't turn away. It was a night like any other. Quiet. Empty. My husband was away again, off on another business trip, another excuse, another reason to be anywhere but home. Jude was in his room, probably watching something, lost in his own world. And I was alone. Like always. I sat in my room, legs curled beneath me, staring at the television, but not really watching. My mind wandered. To the past. To the future. To things I shouldn't be thinking about. To a presence in this house that felt more real than my own husband's. To him. I tried to shake it off, to remind myself who I was, what I was, but something inside me was restless. My skin felt too tight, my heartbeat too loud. The silence of the house pressed in on me, suffocating and heavy. I reached for my glass of wine, barely focusing, and then it happened. The glass slipped. A sharp gasp, a splash of warmth against my skin. I looked down. The deep red had spread across my thin white top, soaking through, clinging to me. I cursed under my breath, setting the glass aside, my mind barely registering the mess. My only thought was getting it off. It was instinct, really, unthinking, automatic. I pulled the shirt over my head, let it drop to the floor. Then my hands went to my shorts, tugging at the waistband, peeling away the fabric stained with the spill. In my head, I was alone. There was no reason to hesitate. And then the door opened. I turned my head. And there he was, my stepson, standing in the doorway, eyes wide, breath caught, frozen. A moment stretched between us, thick and electric. A moment where neither of us moved, neither of us spoke, just staring. I should have grabbed something, covered myself, turned away, done anything, but I didn't. I stayed there, half undressed, heart pounding, mind blank. Because in that second, I realized something I shouldn't have. He wasn't looking away, and neither was I. Something shifted, something unspoken. A line blurred so quickly, I barely recognized it happening. Then, suddenly, reality snapped back into place. He turned away, muttering an apology, his face unreadable. The door shut. The moment was over. But the damage was done. I stood there, my breath uneven, my skin flushed, my hands trembling at my sides. Not from fear. Not from embarrassment. But from something far more dangerous. Because in that brief, stolen moment, I had felt something I hadn't felt in years. I barely slept that night. I told myself it was nothing. An accident. A moment of bad timing, nothing more. But my body betrayed me, my heart still racing, my skin still tingling from something I refused to name. I turned over in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, my husband's empty space beside me colder than ever. I should have felt relief that it was just a fleeting embarrassment. But deep inside, something else had settled. Something far more dangerous. I kept replaying it in my mind, over and over. The way his breath hitched. The way his eyes widened. The way he hesitated before turning away. And worst of all, the way I felt in that moment. I wanted to forget. To convince myself that it was nothing. But the truth clung to me like a second skin. I wasn't just embarrassed. I was exhilarated. For the first time in so long, I had been seen. Not glanced at. Not dismissed. But seen. And that terrified me. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, forcing myself to be normal. To pretend like everything was the same. But it wasn't. I could feel it in the air, thick and heavy, pressing against my skin. He was already at the table. Jude. My stepson. He didn't look away when I walked in. He didn't fidget, didn't avoid eye contact. And that was the worst part. The way he met my gaze, steady. Unreadable. But aware. I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands unsteady, my breath uneven. I told myself not to overthink it. That it was just in my head. But I could feel him watching me. Not in the casual way he used to. Not like a son looking at his father's wife. But as a man studying a woman. And that realization made my pulse stutter. I sat down across from him, pretending to focus on my coffee, but I could feel the weight of his presence pressing against me. I tried to act normal. To keep my voice even when I spoke. Sleep well? A simple question. An innocent one. But my throat felt dry as I said it. He didn't answer right away. He just held my gaze, something unreadable flickering across his face. Yeah, he finally said, his voice calm. You. I forced a smile. Nodded. Lied. Because the truth was, I hadn't slept at all. I kept expecting him to act differently. To fumble over his words, to avoid my gaze, to act like nothing happened. But he didn't. And that's when I knew. It wasn't just me. The moment in that doorway had changed something in both of us. I took a sip of my coffee, but it tasted different. Everything did. The house, the air, the way he sat across from me. Everything that was once normal wasn't anymore. And worst of all, I didn't know if I wanted it to be. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it, that whatever had passed between us in that fleeting moment would dissolve if I just ignored it long enough. But the problem with certain thoughts, certain feelings, is that once they take root, they don't just disappear. They grow. And before you know it, they start changing everything. At first, it was subtle. A shift in the way we moved around each other. A slight hesitation before speaking. The way his eyes lingered just a second too long before flicking away. Tiny moments that seemed harmless on their own, but together, they built something I couldn't ignore. One night, I walked past him in the hallway, and for the first time I felt it. The space between us. The awareness. He was closer than he needed to be. My arm brushed against his. Just for a second. Just skin on skin. But it didn't feel like an accident. Neither of us said anything. We just kept walking. But my breath caught, and my skin burned where we had touched. And I knew he had felt it too. A few days later, I was in the kitchen, reaching for a glass in the cabinet. I hadn't noticed him standing behind me until I turned. Too fast. Too close. His hand shot out to steady me, gripping my waist for just a second. A brief touch. A reflex. But my body betrayed me. I froze. My stomach tightened. And for one heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he let go. Stepped back. Cleared his throat. Careful, he murmured, his voice lower than usual. I nodded, pretending to focus on the glass in my hand, pretending my pulse wasn't thundering in my ears. But I could feel it now. The shift. The air between us, crackling like a live wire. I should have stopped it. I should have said something, made it clear that nothing could happen. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I didn't want to. And that terrified me more than anything else. The next evening, we were in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the television playing something neither of us was watching. I had a blanket draped over my legs, my body curled into the corner of the cushions. And then he laughed, low, amused. My eyes flicked to him, questioning. You really panicked the other night, huh? He teased, a slow smile playing on his lips. I stiffened. My fingers curled around the fabric of the blanket. What? That night. The, situation. He smirked. You looked like you saw a ghost. I swallowed, forcing myself to roll my eyes, to play it off. You were the one standing there like an idiot. He chuckled. I was caught off guard, that's all. A pause. A flicker of something in his expression. Not a bad view, though. The air in the room shifted. My stomach tightened. My fingers clenched the blanket a little harder. He was pushing a boundary, one we both knew existed, one we had been carefully tiptoeing around. But he wasn't backing away. And neither was I. Watch it, I murmured, my voice quieter than I intended. He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. And then, as if nothing had happened, he turned back to the screen, the ghost of a smirk still on his lips. I exhaled slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The line had been drawn a long time ago. But with every look, every touch, every word, we were blurring it more and more. And I was starting to wonder if it had ever really existed at all. It was bound to happen. The way we danced around each other, the way the tension built with every passing day, every lingering glance, every accidental touch that no longer felt accidental. There was only so long we could pretend it wasn't there. And that night, we stopped pretending. The house was quiet. Late. My husband was still out of town, and the emptiness of the place had never felt so loud. I couldn't sleep. I had been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, restless, my mind a storm of thoughts I didn't want to name. I needed something to do, something to break the silence pressing in around me. So I got up, wrapped my robe around me, padded barefoot into the kitchen. Maybe a cup of tea would help, something warm to settle my nerves. I didn't hear him come in. Didn't realize he was there until I turned and saw him, standing by the counter, his hands resting on the edge, watching me. Jude. He was wearing a simple t-shirt, loose sweatpants, nothing remarkable. But the way he looked at me, it made my breath catch. Made my fingers tighten around the mug I hadn't even poured yet. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, voice quiet, rough with exhaustion. I shook my head. "You." He exhaled a short laugh. "Same." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. The dim kitchen light cast soft shadows across his face, sharpening his jaw, darkening his eyes. I turned to the kettle, more for something to do than because I actually needed tea. I felt a move before I saw it. A shift in the air. The warmth of his presence behind me. Close. Too close. I should have stepped away. I should have said something. But I didn't. I just stood there, my fingers gripping the counter, my breath shallow, my pulse echoing in my ears. And then, his hand brushed against mine. Just a touch. Light. Barely there. But I felt it like a spark igniting something in my chest. I turned my head, slowly, and when our eyes met, the weight of everything we had been avoiding crashed down between us. We weren't pretending anymore. His gaze flickered down to my lips, then back up. A silent question. A moment that stretched and stretched, thick with everything we wanted to say but couldn't. And then, a sound. The front door. A key turning in the lock. The unmistakable creak of the door swinging open. My husband. We flew apart like we had been burned, like guilty children caught in a crime. My pulse was hammering, my skin still tingling from where his hand had brushed mine. I moved to the sink, grabbing the nearest cup, pretending, scrambling for normalcy. Jude took a step back, running a hand through his hair, turning away, as if the distance could erase what had just happened. As if the air between us wasn't still charged, vibrating with something unspoken. And then my husband's voice cut through the kitchen, casual, unsuspecting. "You two are up late." I turned, forcing a smile, my voice carefully even. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded, tossing his keys on the counter, rubbing the exhaustion from his face. He looked between us, but if he noticed anything strange, he didn't say it. But I saw the way Jude kept his back turned. The way he clenched his jaw. The way his shoulders held tension that hadn't been there before. And I knew. We had stepped too close to the edge. And we weren't coming back. The next morning, everything felt different. The house, the air, even the sunlight streaming through the windows, it all felt sharper, heavier, pressing against me like a weight I couldn't shake. Jude was already in the kitchen when I walked in. But something was wrong. He didn't look at me. Didn't acknowledge me at all. Just sat there, staring at his coffee, fingers drumming against the table, his jaw tight, his body tense in a way that made my stomach twist. I hesitated in the doorway, gripping the edge of the counter as if that could steady me. I wanted to say something, to break the silence between us. But what was there to say? That we had almost crossed a line? That I hadn't stopped it sooner because, deep down, I hadn't wanted to? That even now, standing there watching him, I could still feel the ghost of his touch on my skin. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to move. I poured a cup of coffee, the clinking of the spoon against the porcelain sounding too loud in the thick silence between us. He didn't glance up, didn't shift. He just sat there, locked inside himself, as if last night had never happened. As if nothing had changed. But it had, and we both knew it. My husband walked in moments later, stretching, rubbing his eyes. He looked at me, then at Jude, then back at me. His brow furrowed, just slightly. I felt my stomach clench. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. I forced a smile. Too fast. Too forced. "Yeah. Fine." His eyes lingered on me for a second too long. I could see the flicker of something in his expression. A question. A hesitation. A feeling he couldn't quite put into words. But he didn't push it. Jude stood abruptly, pushing his chair back so fast that it scraped against the floor. My breath caught as he grabbed his phone, his keys, moving with a tension I didn't understand. "I think I'm gonna head back early," he muttered, not looking at me. "Got some things to take care of." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Just silence. Thick and suffocating. My husband raised a brow. Thought you were staying a few more days? Jude shrugged, still not meeting my gaze. Changed my mind. He was leaving. Something inside me sank, an ache I didn't have the right to feel. My hands clenched around my mug, my throat tightening as I tried to act like this wasn't affecting me. Like I didn't feel like I was losing something. But what, exactly, had I lost? A moment? A possibility? A version of myself I had almost allowed to exist. I watched him disappear down the hall, listened to the sound of his door closing. And I knew this was his way of running. Of putting distance between us before we did something neither of us could take back. And maybe that was for the best. But then why did it feel like I was crumbling? After he left, the house felt different. Still the same walls, the same furniture, the same quiet hum of life moving on. But I wasn't the same. And I couldn't pretend to be. I sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing, my thoughts unraveling in a tangled mess. My husband was in his office upstairs, talking on the phone, moving through his life as if nothing had changed. But inside me, everything was shifting, cracking, reshaping itself into something I didn't recognize. Had it been real? Or had it just been a fleeting moment of weakness? A lapse in judgment? A desperate grasp for something I had convinced myself I needed. I thought about Jude. About the way he had looked at me that night in the kitchen. About the tension that had built between us, so strong it had nearly swallowed us whole. And then I thought about the way he had left. How he didn't say goodbye. How he ran, as if putting miles between us would erase what had happened. And maybe it would. Maybe that was the best thing for both of us. Distance. Space. A chance to forget. A chance to rewrite it as something meaningless. But was it meaningless? I didn't know anymore. And that scared me more than anything. I glanced toward the staircase, listening to my husband's muffled voice. The man I had built a life with. The man I had promised myself to. The man who had, in so many ways, already left me long before this even happened. Would he notice? Would he ever know? If he looked at me closely enough, would he see the cracks? The invisible fault lines that had been deepening for years, until one night, they had nearly split open. What if he did find out? What if I had crossed that final line? Would he have seen it as a betrayal? Or just confirmation of what had already been true, that I had been lost to him for a long time? I exhaled, pressing my palms against my face, my chest tight with something too heavy to name. This wasn't just about what almost happened. This was about why it almost happened. Loneliness is a dangerous thing. It sneaks up on you. It disguises itself as routine, as normalcy, as just another quiet night in an empty bed. And before you know it, you start searching for something, anything, that makes you feel alive again. Even if it's in the wrong place. Even if it comes at the cost of everything you thought you held sacred. I could have destroyed everything. My marriage. My family. My own sense of self. For what? A moment? A feeling? A desperate need to be seen. I told myself it wasn't too late. That I still had a choice. That I could rebuild. That I could pull myself back from the edge before I lost myself completely. But even as I made that silent promise to myself, even as I told myself I would try, I knew the truth. Some things you can't take back. And some ghosts never really leave. Some moments never really leave you. They cling to you like shadows, creeping in when you least expect them. You tell yourself you've moved on, that you've closed the door, but deep down, you know better. I rebuilt. I tried. I put my energy back into my marriage, into the life I had almost set on fire. I told myself that whatever almost happened was just that, almost. A fleeting mistake. A dangerous thought. Nothing more. But even now, there are nights when I catch myself staring at the doorway, remembering the way he stood there. The way he looked at me. The way the air between us felt charged with something unspoken. And I wonder, did he feel it too? Did he lie awake that night, the way I did? Did he leave because he knew something had already been broken? Or was he running from something he wasn't ready to admit? Maybe I'll never know. But tell me, have you ever found yourself in a moment like this? A moment where emotions almost led you somewhere you never thought you'd go? A moment where one decision could have changed everything? What did you do? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and impossible to forget, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Turn on your post notifications because trust me, the next story might be even more shocking than this one. Because if I've learned anything, it's that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones we almost keep.